Hello, this is Angie Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Hello, and welcome to Centered. I am Angie Yingst, and I will be your cruise director. It's been a while since I did a little chatty Q&A episode, so I have a bunch of questions that kind of have been piling up around the office, so I'm going to sort of pepper some of these little Q&A episodes around through the weeks. I seem to only be doing astrological earth medicine readings and Wheel of the Year readings. And truthfully, I've honestly been at a bit of a crossroads after an overworked few months with not enough sleep, downtime, or self-care. And I just broke. I broke maybe just a little. I didn't have a full-on break, but I broke. I found myself on a new plateau looking at a stark desert landscape thinking, when did my garden become so barren and dying? I mean, not literally. This is like a theoretical garden in my soul or my brain or my heart or all of the places. I just found myself one day thinking in my hallway, sort of in that 100-yard stare into the ether, neither present or not present, just dissociated. And I said, I just can't do this anymore. This workaholism is going to kill me. Like, I cannot be so extra. And I mean, I am just extra, so it means I have to let go of stuff. It also was abundantly clear that I hadn't quite processed my breast cancer and uterine cancer and the ending of my work with my mentor and some of the other struggles we've been through in the past few years with my family and my husband. And it all kind of hit me at once, like, oh my God, girl, you're in danger. Life has been crazy and nutty, and I think I've just been staying busy to deal with it. And I honestly cannot tell you how long I was standing there. Maybe an hour, maybe 2, maybe 10 minutes. I honestly do not know. But I just decided I had to say no. And all those things I thought I couldn't cancel just seemed to be able to get canceled. And it just didn't seem fair to see clients teach, hold space when I was burnt out. So I took some summer to minimally work, and I did still work with my membership group, but I really spent time with the kids, focused on my own healing and self-care or lack thereof, and laying low with new clients and new classes and podcasting. And I thought, okay, when autumn comes, I'll just jump back into that train. And autumn came, and I just really did not feel the life seeping back into me. I was suddenly neck deep in trauma and healing work and figuring out which road to go down. You know, that's what crossroads are. We have a number of different pathways forward. Crossroads, you know, in magical workings and in folklore are places between the realms, basically where the physical and spiritual realms meet. And they're places of liminality, and I really felt like I was in a liminal space, neither here nor there, as they say, betwixt and between. And in Greek mythology, the crossroads are associated with Hecate and Hermes. Hermes is the alchemist, the protector, the human herald, you know, the herald to humans and to the gods. It is the protector of travelers and thieves and merchants and orators. And Hecate is the witch goddess, and we love her. She represents like the mother, maiden, and crone, or maiden, mother, crone, as if you go in order. And she's represented with the 3 bodies because she represents 3 different directions that we take, 3 different lives that we have as women. And her connection to the crossroads is a lot more cemented in ritual. In Greek life, they would actually have suppers for Hecate. That's what they called them. And they were left at the crossroads at every new moon. And one of her most common titles was the goddess of the crossroads. So I know in my magical workings, you know, I often will bury things at the crossroads, places where people turn and change their fate. And so, you know, I hope to be standing on my strong 2 legs soon. I still have so much joy in my life. I don't want you to think I'm just like in this ball in a fetal position in the corner. That's not how I do. If I'm depressed, I'm never quite in contact with that. I just kind of stay busy and I get tired. So, you know, I feel like I'm in a choose my own adventure book, and hopefully we'll get to turn the page soon to find out my fate. But I haven't quite figured out which of the options I'm going to. I'm hoping it's page 23. But the podcast is something that's deep in my soul, and I don't really care how many listeners I have. I don't care how many plays or reviews or whatever. I love that people connect with it. That's awesome. But truly, I just love sharing information. I love researching. I love laughing. I love talking to people. I love interviewing. I love it all. And I've really missed the conversational part of my podcast and the Q&A part, which feels like a conversation to me. But I've just felt so exhausted for so long. And I appreciate all the emails I received. I wasn't able to respond to all of them. I just was in overwhelm. So I appreciate it though. So finally October's come. The air is cooler. I feel motivated. So I'm working on recording and editing a bunch of conversations with my friends, some colleagues, some practitioners, to bring you some juicy insights, wisdom, and fresh perspectives about life on life's terms. I don't know exactly what my work will look like in a year or in 6 months or next week, but I do know the podcast is part of my joy, so it's going to stay. At any rate, that is all I have to say about that. I appreciate you all. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your kindness. I truly love you all. And this one is a Q&A episode from questions I have amassed in the last few months. It's like a big laundry pile, and my washing machine was broke or something. So I'm just going to start with, some small ones, and then maybe I'll build up a little. But if you have a question, you can always send it to me. And if it's juicy, I will put it to the top of the pile, because that's how I do. But just send it to me at Angie@themoonandstone.com. And you can record it as a voice memo, or you can also record a question or voicemail on my Spotify account. So I have this Spotify for Podcasters account, and you can record questions on there. So please feel free to do that. It will be linked in the show notes. I also generally just love feedback, so send me any. That's the only report card I receive in my life, so thank you very much. And of course, rate, review, podcast. That's awesome. At any rate, here are today's questions asked many, many months ago, so I'm just hoping none of them are, how do you get out from under a heavy rock, asking for a friend? Or my house is on fire. Any suggestions? What rock can I use? Those would not be good. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for listening. My first question is from Kelly. She asked, what is the best practice stone to not shoot your mouth off at work? Seriously. I love this question so much, because shooting one's mouth off actually is one of the most precious spiritual practices we have. And not doing it is also one of the most precious spiritual practices we have. And I think, speaking our truth and doing it in a way that isn't hurtful or painful or causes damage or causes additional suffering is really, really challenging. Okay. But I do something that I call the sacred pause, and then later found out that a bunch of Buddhist writers and thinkers call it that too, but it's not exactly the same thing as the way I refer to the sacred pause. But I think, applied to daily practice, it can really be life-changing. And, in early recovery, this is one of those things that we really hone in, we just hammered into people's heads that our first thought is probably wrong. And so we have to take a pause. And so that's when I start calling it the sacred pause, because that's when we let quote unquote God in, or we let spirit in, or whatever. So, honestly, when people talk about spiritual practice, they often seem to talk about it in a way that's separate from actual life, separate from your chores, separate from your daily life. They're talking about going to a monastery, going to a retreat, or going to church, or going to the woods, or whatever it is. And, I want to say that your spiritual practice is your life. Okay, the saying kind of goes, it's easy to be a holy man on a mountain. And I think the idea here is that when we have no frustrations, no agitations, we're just alone in our own head, that's hard. Okay, I'm not saying it's hard, but when we have no troublemakers in our life, nobody pushing the envelope, pushing the buttons, triggering us, we can simply exist, we're just kind of dealing with ourselves. But when our patience is tested by a child crying, a dog barking, our husband standing right in front of the drawer we want to get to, we really have to work our spiritual program. And, that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, or Everything, All at Once, Everywhere, that to me is life. It's like right now I'm alone in my house. My dogs are sleeping. My kids are at work, at school. My husband's at work. It's quiet. I feel very spiritually connected. When they get home and they start talking and, or not doing their chores or not responding to me when I talk to them or whatever, that's when, my triggered, wounded child starts arising. And that's when I want to shoot my mouth off. And at work, it's exactly the same. I don't work with other people, so it's not exactly my thing. But, when I was working as a waitress, how many things I wanted to say that I just didn't say. And that's why I say, shooting your mouth off sometimes is a spiritual practice of speaking your truth, no matter how awkward or whatever, we have to just say the thing. But when we're walking a spiritual program, we want to combine those things. We want to be able to share the truth. And, one of the things that my therapist said to me when my sister was living with me after rehab was, healthy families hold each other accountable. And I think that a lot, like in my circles. I think it a lot like when I'm doing recovery work, when I'm, parenting, shooting my mouth off is thinking mindlessly, right? So I want to be able to tap into my wisdom, tap into my spiritual self, tap into and access the wisdom of my inner adult, my inner parent, my inner sober person, my inner spiritual person, the holy man on the mountain, to help assist my triggered, wounded child, right? So in many ways, that is the practice, that we take the pause before. We don't act mindlessly, but we act mindfully, and we tap into our inner wisdom. And it really doesn't, it's a practice. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of us, particularly if we have childhood wounds about being neglected or being misunderstood or not being seen or heard. I am going to be 50 in 2 months, but, I think my generation and older, we were told children should be seen and not heard, So many of us, like just societally, have a wound around telling our truth and talking about, hey, you hurt my feelings. Hey, we don't feel comfortable with confrontation. And it's almost like, we get that anxiety and that wound from just wanting to say anything. We want to yell, we want to scream, we want to be heard, we want to be seen, because our inner wounded child begins acting out at the age we were when we were hurt. So sarcasm is a teenage discovery, right? Tantruming is a toddler discovery. Introversion and self-abuse is a tween thing. That can sometimes be a teenager thing. It can sometimes be an adult thing. Don't get me wrong. All of these go everywhere, but we can sometimes catch ourselves at that age that we were. Like, what is your first reaction? Is it to be sarcastic? Is it to be unkind? Is it to be like mean, like to hit back, hit low? That is very much a middle school thing, right? Like if someone says, you're not really showing up for work on time, and, I feel like this has to be a write-up now. It's like, well, you take 2-hour lunches, very much a middle school thing. Or, well, at least I'm not, fat or something. That's the worst one I could have used probably, because that's my wound, right? So I'm going to go there. But when we catch ourselves, we get to integrate. Okay, we get to stop and say, oh gosh, how old are you right now? It's a great question. How old are you right now? That's where the sacred pause is so very useful, is because then we get to dialogue with our triggered, traumatized self. We get to reparent ourselves. How old are you right now? What do you need in this moment? Is it, I need to self-soothe. I need to be heard. And those are like the times when we get to like access what we actually know instead of acting out. So when we access our inner wisdom, we can say something like, listen, I'm feeling a little triggered right now. I really need to talk to you about this exact moment, but I can't do it right now. So let's make a time to talk. Okay. And we get to practice a sacred pause. Now, I want to just not preface, but just to share with you that Tara Brach, she uses sacred pause differently than me. She basically uses the sacred pause as being mindful in the midst of busyness. Okay. And I mean, there's some overlap. I don't use it that way. She has a wonderful meditation that she uses where she calls the sacred pause an antidote for being disconnected. And I certainly see it that way. And you might find her meditation super useful. I mean, I find it wonderful, but not exactly what I do. I mean, what I'm trying to do is say, like, I'm just about to react. Okay, I want to breathe and respond rather than react. Okay, that's an Al-Anon thing. Let us respond instead of react. Okay. And what Tara Brach says is the sacred pause helps us to reconnect with the present moment. And, that can be very useful too. We can just kind of look at our feet and be like, this is where I am right now. She says the sacred pause helps us to reconnect with the present moment, especially when we are caught up in striving, obsessing, and leaning into the future. Pausing enables us to re-enter the mystery and vitality only found here and now. So for me, I use it, of course, in the context of recovery, but also in my spiritual life. I invite my sponsees and my coaching clients to notice the triggered self and then close their eyes. And it's in that moment before we respond where we invite spirit into the conversation. And of course, spirit can be anything that you think, your higher self. It can be God, it can be Great Spirit, it can be the mystery, it can be nature, whatever it is. We breathe and say, Great Spirit, help me access my wisdom. Or, higher Angie, help me access your wisdom. Calm. Wisdom usually doesn't shoot her mouth off. As the Buddha said, speak with kindly motivation. Speak what is true and helpful. Speak in due season and for the benefit of all. And so when we pause and connect with our higher intention, we learn to see with the eyes of compassion. And then everything becomes a little more workable, a little better. And that's, part of what Jack Kornfield kind of talks about with the sacred pause. So I basically, try to practice some breathing. And, one of the things that we really are uncomfortable with is silence in the midst of other people. So practicing like a moment to gather your thoughts feels uncomfortable. I mean, everybody wants to fill the space. So taking a moment, just like closing your eyes and being like, breathe, count to 10 is, the usual recommendation for like parents who are about to fly off the handle. Well, we can apply that to anything, right? We can pause and take a 10-minute breath or 10-second, sorry, not 10-minute. 10-second breath, or do a box breathing, like inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and pause for 4. So we call that box because you go, like the 4-4-4, 4x4. So 4x4x4, correct? So I generally try to practice that in a moment of triggeredness and wait a moment before pushing the respond button. So, this goes for like speaking out loud or texting is a really terrible one, right? Because we just want to shoot our mouth off. But so many of us are impulsive in that way and ruled by the passion of the moment. And, so many texts are misunderstood. The other day, like I responded to my son in a very quick way, not so kindly. And he didn't say anything terrible. He just called me out on using the word few. Like I said, we have to leave in a few minutes. I said, we have to leave in a few. And he said, we have to leave in 45 minutes. You're not, It's not a few. We have 45 minutes. And, I was just getting dinner on the table. So for me, 45 minutes goes by pretty quickly because I'm cleaning and cooking and doing all the stuff. So for me, a few is a lot sooner. And I just reacted. I reacted very strongly. I was so tired after weeks and weeks of my kids being sarcastic, calling me out on those kind of things, like just being like little sticklers for grammar and my way of being prone to exaggeration for humor, which I think is funny, but not everybody understands that I realize that it's not true and I'm laughing about it. Like I'll be like, it's 150 degrees in here. It's not literally 150 degrees. I'm just hot, So, and I think that humor is hilarious. My kids think it's awful, So they're always calling me out on it. Or if I say, yeah, don't you have like 15 things to do tonight? And they're like, I have 2, and then I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I wasn't really meaning you have 50. Like, I just get frustrated. I get sick of being called out. And so I reacted. Was it the best? No, it was impulsive. My texts, the same thing. Sometimes you just like misunderstand. And that wasn't the worst thing he said to me that week. You know what I mean? So reacting to something like that feels like, oh, like I just like woke up going like, oh, geez. Like he's not going to get it that I have been swallowing the reaction for so long that it was much bigger, right? Much bigger than that. And, part of it is that like I didn't grow up that way. I was terrified to talk to my parents or call them out on things or make them feel idiotic or stupid because they would withdraw their love sometimes, So I was like, here I go, like just yelling at them, Well, I was just like, don't talk to me that way, Stop acting like I'm an idiot. I'm not an idiot. You know what I'm talking about. It just was facetious. I don't know if that's the right word. But, the truth is that if I had said gently, like, hey, I really don't appreciate when you're calling me out all the time on things that don't seem that important. Like I know I annoy you because you're with me all the time, but let's let it go. If I had done that, I wouldn't have exploded. I wouldn't have, and I didn't like scream or anything. I was just like, don't talk to me that way. La 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 la. So, one thing that is interesting about this is that a lot of us feel super justified in responding in a way that's angry or over the top because we're hurt, right? But you hurt my feelings, so I'm just going to like, blah, yell at you. And I think, that understanding our own triggers is our responsibility. Responding in a way that explains who we are, what we need, what we want. Those things are our responsibility. So yes, someone can hurt your feelings and trigger you, but it's also our responsibility to know why that hurts us. Why it triggers us and whether it's that person's responsibility to manage that trigger or not. And I would say the closer you are to somebody, the more it matters, right? Like it doesn't always matter if, it's some stranger on the street who says something. It matters if it's your close friend and they're saying something. So, one thing that my first sponsor asked me very bluntly, by the way, is, do you ever say no to yourself, Angie? And I was like, I don't know. Do I? And the truth is, like, I would say no to myself about certain things, but not about responding when I was angry. Not about shooting off an email or a text to someone who pissed me off. So, those are the kind of times when we really get to practice the sacred pause. A later sponsor called it I wee wee. And what she said by that is, I want what I want when I want it. So if I wanted to send the text or I wanted to call and tell somebody off, I would do it. And she would always say, don't I wee wee yourself. So our triggers push us to act without reflection, and practicing the sacred pause is really about practice. Have some go-to responses on hand. I have to think about that before I respond. Can we talk tomorrow? Or very two really strong ones, or just very simple. This is what my first sponsor also told me. You can respond in two ways, oh and ouch. Okay, so when someone says something to you and they want to trigger you and they want you to argue and they're throwing out the bait, you can just say, oh, like, thank you for your opinion, But you just say, oh. Or if someone's intentionally trying to hurt you, you can just say, ouch. Because you're not intentionally trying to cause harm back, but you're letting them know I'm hurt. And then all the other good responses can be silence. So, if you really want to say something and that those three things are uncomfortable, you can just say, let me reflect on this a bit and I'll get back to you. Or I'm feeling triggered and defensive and I need to sit with it. The sacred pause can be the difference between making peace or making amends later on. And amends are hard. So let's just make peace first. How's that? Boom sent me this, like, just as a comment, and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Chris said, I had a student ask me once, how do you know that you're doing the right thing with your life? And he said this was a composition course, by the way. She was and is a sweet, sincere, and very sharp person. She asked questions that were gut punches and felt like they revealed, I knew so little, but man, I didn't know how to answer that. So I'll ask you. And I think it is a gut punch to realize we know very little. And, one of the things I used to study martial arts, and I think when you first study martial arts, you realize, like, oh, I am capable of fighting. I am capable of hitting someone. I'm capable of moving in this way. I'm capable of whatever. And then the other side of that is that as you go on, you're like, man, I kind of hope I could apply this sometime and like get into a fight and like start to fight. And then as you go a little further and you get your ass handed to you a couple times, you're like, I don't know anything. And that I don't know anything place is the best place to be, right? It is having beginner's mind. It is being teachable. It is being open. It is realizing the beauty and importance of walking a spiritual path or walking a life path with humility, because we just do not know. How do you know you're doing the right thing with your life? You do not know. And we can only feel it in our bones, right? And also know that the right thing at 21 is not always the right thing at 31, 41, 51, 61. We hope to grow. We hope to expand our consciousness. We hope to expand our sense of rightness. I had this idea when I saw this question that if it were 100 years ago, that someone might go to a monastery with just this question, right? Or go to a mountain to become a hermit with this question. How do you know you're doing the right thing with your life? But right now, in this day and age, the Google search engine is our hermit in the woods. That's going to be our spiritual teacher. So I cut and pasted it. I just wanted to know, what's Google going to say? How do you know that you're doing the right thing with your life? And it was a shit show of crappy life coaching. And I'm sure you could have predicted that before I even started it. But so many of the pieces were blogs encouraging you to trust your intuition and trust your gut and all that kind of stuff, or to follow your bliss or to follow your happiness. And, honestly, if I did that, I would still be drinking on the daily, because as of right now, I have double digits of recovery. And my sponsor said something like this the one day in a meeting: if I feel too happy, I know I'm engaging in some kind of addictive pattern, because life is suffering and it's hard and it's complex. And there are times when we're just not supposed to be happy. We can be contented, but being happy all the time can be challenging, because it can be that we're avoiding hard feelings. I said that the one day and everybody was like arguing with me, like, oh, I feel happy all the time. I'm just a happy person. And I'm like, cool. good for you. But that's not all of us. And two, you're not an addict or an alcoholic. I am. So that means I'm just looking to get out of my feelings. And if you're like me, that feelings are hard, then thinking about happiness that way, like, am I feeling distracted, is probably a better one. So here's my bullshitty spiritual coaching advice. There are some tricks to check in with yourself on whether or not you're doing the right thing. And I would say you could answer these like true or false questions because I just wrote them as statements. I am not ashamed of what I'm doing and I am open to discussing it with a stranger. True or false? I am growing and learning and living a well-examined life. True or false? I am not harming other living beings. True or false? I am using my experiences to help others and not putting them in the back of my shadowy closet filled with venomous, shame-filled spiders. True or false? I can reflect back and look at my successes with pride while also realizing they do not define me. They're part of my growth. True or false? I do not keep making the same mistakes and blaming others for them. The next one, number 7, is I do not dread my life or my life's work. And I don't mean the occasional, I'd rather stay in bed and watch Netflix all day kind of day. But if that's every day, true or false? And then the last one is I consider those around me, like my partner, my children, my pets, and their needs. And if you're mostly a yes, I think you're doing the right thing. Now, here is my real answer, which is you can never know if you're doing the right thing because we are not privy to that information. But we do have an inner barometer of who we are and what feels right in our bones. And if we keep wondering what the good thing is or the right thing or the whatever thing is, it is like chasing a carrot. It's like chasing a carrot that's moving forward at a clip you can't keep up with. Because first of all, right or rightness changes, right? Correct? It's a moving goal line, like the carrot metaphor. It's a moving goal line. And so, for example, in my 20s, rightness was I didn't sleep through my alarm. And now I'm like, rightness is, have I been kind? Do I owe anybody an apology? It changes because I have matured and I have grown wiser, hopefully, and I've grown kinder, hopefully. For me, there is no right and wrong that is universal except to be kind to other people, to, work out of love. And I have had people, push back at me when I say, being kind to others. And like, Angie, you have not ever met a truly evil person. And I was like, maybe I haven't. I don't know. I mean, I've had abuse. I've had domestic violence. I've had a lot of bad shit happen to me. I've had my whole house burglarized. I've had bad stuff happen. But maybe you're right. Maybe I haven't reckoned with evil enough. And I'm not challenging the universe for that. I'm very good with what my life has given me. But, my life, when I consider what is right, it helps to alleviate suffering of others. It promotes happiness and spirituality. That works for me. I know a lot of people living amazing lives in corporate America who are administrative assistants, accountants. They're kind people. They work hard. They're good to their children and animals. They're diligent. They mitigate the suffering of those around them. They're good people. And I also know people who work as shaman who are arrogant asses who've truly fucked up people's lives, performed bad medicine, dishonored the tradition. So the outside path you take doesn't matter, in my opinion. How you walk it does. So you can be, working for the state and be a good person, and that is the right path. Does that make sense? I just believe that we need to be aligned with our integrity. Those things, like we have to walk our walk, whatever that is, right? So that's my answer. Maybe it was too long, but I hope it helped. Shad asked, as a mother, how do you manage to show up as your authentic self in your business when your day is filled with chaos and micromanaging or managing tiny human schedules, including your own? Do you have a specific crystal or ritual you do before you start working that helps you ground in the moment and clear your mind to focus on the task at hand? Thank you so much. So my instinct is just to say I don't manage it well, obviously, or I wouldn't have taken a step back from things, but actually showing up as my authentic self is pretty easy because as either a character defect or an asset, however you want to look at it, I am not capable of pretending or being other people. Like I am always this weird and goofy and sarcastic and know-it-all-y and motherly and nurturing. And I'm always this. And I'm not really good at concealing that or hiding that. I always show up the same way. But, it isn't easy to show up and give all of yourself in all places. And, showing up at my business and at my home and managing it and being pulled in so many directions, I can just say is really really hard for me. And I'm not great at it. I find like so many women in my classes are past their childbearing years. Like they're retired or they're nearing retirement or they don't have kids at home. And I think it's because it's really freaking hard when you're in, like, I'm always like, it's my nom, like getting woken up every 2 hours by a baby. I'm past that stage, thankfully, but like that is really hard. And having like, going to a class at night and then you're like, who's gonna feed the baby and who's going to put them to bed? And, you might have a really great partner. Like I have a partner that's really great at doing stuff and being with kids, but, he's also burnt out. So we got two burnt out people and no one's like able to show up. So it can be really, really hard, but I can just say that mothering my children and mothering my business tap into like the inherent strengths I have as a caregiver, a healer, a compassion warrior. And then on top of it, just having like a pretty good logical brain. I used to have an awesome memory. It has been worn down over the years. And I'm pretty sure when they took my uterus, my short-term memory went along with it. But I can just tell you that I find it pretty overwhelming and totally chaotic to be managing so many schedules and so much responsibility. I am so tired of deciding what people eat 3 times a day. Like, just feed yourself. Like, put food in your mouth. You know what I mean? Because I ask and I'm like, I get 2 out of 3 children wanting something. And then I'm like, I ate this. Just like freaking eat yourself. Like, put food in your mouth. I said that to Zach the other day because he was so grumpy. And I was just like, just eat something, because he wouldn't eat whatever lunch I made. So, part of the reason I stepped back from my business is because I wasn't showing up in the way I wanted to show up for my kids, but also myself, and my business and all of that. So, there are trade-offs. And I wish I could give you like a specific way to manage. I think what I have to do all the time is prioritize my life and prioritize what's most important. And, I do have a lot of lists. Okay. And I'll just be perfectly blunt that I am a color coding, flaggy, to-do list kind of person. So I have like a monthly calendar. I write my whole to-do list on for the month. And then I have a daily calendar. And then I have my calendar that hangs on the wall. And I have a whiteboard, like I write things like 3, 4 different places. I learn by writing, so I'll remember things and I write it down, I can kind of like picture the time I wrote down, stuff like that. I get really, overwhelmed because I have a lot going on in my brain. So those to-do lists help me. And I've done a lot of tricks because I have ADHD. And that works really well, like doing Pomodoros all day. I also have like a list in the back of my notebook that just says later. And those are things that I'm going to think about later or research later. I mean, I honestly will research. Like if I think of something, I used to just go and research it. And then it's like 2 hours later and I have like figured out how to make a koi pond. But I don't need to do that. And I don't have a koi pond and I don't need to build a koi pond. So that's the kind of like stuff that will derail me. So, what I do every day is I do prayers, and they're really extensive morning ritual. And that's like the thing that kicks off my day every day. So I will basically like call in the directions with song, light candles, do my altar, do my like grid work if I have a grid going. I just do all of that stuff. And what I'm really doing is just trying to align with spirit and be of service and be humble for the day, like walk the humble path. But one of the things that I think it was one of my mentors or sponsor said, I think I would call her a lot and just be like, I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do that and I have to be there here at this time and there here at this time. And she just would say, stop, look at your feet. And she's like, that's where you are. You're right here. You're right here right now. And so often when I'm like getting into that like mind that starts going of all the things I have to do, I will catch myself. I will stop. I will breathe. I will look at my feet and I will say, what are you thinking about right now? And it's usually 15 things at one time. And then I'll say, this is where you are right now. Stand right here. Look around you. Your beautiful children are there. Your house is there. Your dogs are there. Whatever is happening. What do you need right now? How can you break out of this? How can you be more mindful in this moment? What do you need to do right now? Let's prioritize. So, that's the kind of stuff I do throughout the day. I used to have like a mindfulness bell, and that would be the same thing. Like the mindfulness bell would go off, it would ding, and then I'd be like, what are you thinking about right now? Okay, let's refocus on the present moment. And that was super, super helpful. So, I always think that we can come to like this V in our pathway. And like in Alcoholics Anonymous, where we talk about recovery a lot, we're like, when we make decisions, like we're either moving closer to a drink or closer to Great Spirit or closer to spirit. And so for me, I'm like, in those moments, I'm like, what do you want to do right now, Angie? Like, do you want to keep moving yourself into chaos? Like, do you want to go closer to the drink kind of idea? Or do you want to go closer to God or Great Spirit or the spiritual? And I always choose the spiritual. So usually those moments, when I feel like I cannot stop, I stop. Because, they call for the opposite of what my anxiety wants me to do. Because what my anxiety wants me to do is be on high alert, to be kind of in that hyper reactive, hyper alert state. And in that state, I cannot access my wisdom. I cannot access peace. I cannot access spirit. So, my rituals are really like rituals of staying present, rituals, in the morning to just kick me off in the right direction. And like, my morning ritual is insane. It's a lot, and I don't expect anyone to do it, but I've found like I need it. It's my perfect day. And again, like, do I do it every day? No. Do I try to do it every day? Yes. Like I do sit down and like think, okay, now is the time where we, can connect with spirit, where everything is quiet, where you can meditate, where you can be present. And that's so vital to me. So I hope that helps. I hopefully answered your question. So thanks for asking it. Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.